10 Halloweens ago, I reviewed The Evil Within, and saying that makes me feel very old. Now, this video didn't take off in views, but I still had fun making it as it was the first Halloween special I did for my channel. You're welcome to watch it, even though it's bad. Seriously, the audio peaks like crazy and my beard was just nasty. As for the game itself, I wasn't a huge fan of it. While the horror set pieces were spectacular, the characters were boring, the gameplay was clunky, and it was way too long to the point where I couldn't even beat it in time for Halloween. It wasn't until 2021 that I played it to completion, and most of my sentiments remained the same, although I better appreciated some aspects like the environments and creature designs. So I figured since it's been 10 years since I played that first game, it would only be appropriate to finally wipe The Evil Within 2 from my backlog, especially because I've heard nothing but praise for it. Anytime I came across a video or post discussing great horror games, The Evil Within 2 was usually brought up. I think the community became more vocal about it after the closure of developer Tango Gameworks earlier this year. Thankfully, they're fine now after being acquired by Krafton, but the Evil Within IP remains with Microsoft, so that's a whole other can of worms I'm not getting into right now. After hearing how much people love this sequel, I went in expecting a horror masterpiece. Plus, I just wrapped up Silent Hill 2, so I was in the mood for another third-person survival horror game with a 2 in the title. Even though it's on Xbox Game Pass, I booted up my Steam copy because I wasn't going to let that $9.99 go to waste, damn it. The Evil Within is set 3 years after the events of 1, with protagonist Sebastian Castellanos hitting rock bottom after no one believes his brain got sucked into some messed up matrix filled with all kinds of horrors. That's the best summary of the first game you're getting out of me. He soon finds out that his daughter Lily, thought to have died in a house fire, is actually alive and being used by the sinister corporation Mobius, which is responsible for creating those evil matrix machines called STEM. Lily is lost inside the STEM system, so Mobius tasks Sebastian with finding her in what should have been a simple rescue mission, but this is called The Evil Within 2, and it would be a short game if there wasn't some evil within there, would it? I know, that wasn't very clever, especially because the game did a better job in making fun of the title.
I told you I wasn't going to leave this place. It's f***ing evil out there.
That may be, but there's evil within, too.
Whatever.
Like the first game, this sequel has the quintessential elements of survival horror: an over-the-shoulder third-person perspective, a multitude of weapons with an emphasis on ammo reservation, and oh Jesus! Run, 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 why is there a stamina bar? I get it adds to the challenge, but if I was getting chased by a freak of nature like this in real life, my adrenaline would never. Even though The Evil Within 2 is mechanically similar to the first game, its biggest difference is the level structure, as each chapter is broken off into non-linear sections with collectibles and side quests. It's something in the industry we call kind of open world, but not really. While you can explore these areas to find ammo, gear, and NPCs, some of them will disappear for good when you get to a certain point in the story. So it's imperative to do every side quest as they come up, otherwise you'll miss out on some great weapons. You don't want to play a game without a shotgun, do you? In my first few hours playing The Evil Within 2, I thought it was a clear improvement over the first game. The open-ended structure rewarded exploration, which is something I always appreciate, and the gunplay was satisfying, even though the intense zoom took some getting used to. There's even a first-person mode that functioned well for the few minutes I played around with it. I enjoyed my time with The Evil Within 2, and when the credits rolled after 15 hours, I thought, this is a good game. But it's not the best. Whoa, hold up. Let me explain. I do not hate The Evil Within 2. Hell, I don't even dislike it. I just don't think it's as incredible as some have made it out to be. But let me start with what it does right before diving into what holds it back. For one, it is good survival horror, with solid gameplay, and I was never bored going through each chapter. There were plenty of tense moments fighting grotesque zombie-like creatures, and it always felt fair on the normal difficulty. It was rough for me in the beginning though. I died a lot due to lower health and resources, but the upgrade system from the first game returns here, allowing you to increase your health, stamina, and crouch walking speed, which you should max out right away cause it's insanely slow otherwise. The currency you exchange for these upgrades is green gel dropped by enemies, offering even more of an incentive to kill them instead of sneaking by. There are even some optional mini-bosses that reward more green gel than usual, and I always took them down for those sweet green rewards. Weapons are also upgradable by using weapon parts that increase damage, ammo count, etc. I always love games that let me grow as a person, starting like this, only to turn into this. Because The Evil Within 2 is a horror game, you'd safely expect some scares, like these glitches. Oh great, you're stuck to me. Maybe if I push this button you'll— oh, you pushed it for me, thanks. Yep, let's just take a ride upstairs, buddy. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Okay, as for the intentional scares, there aren't many jump out of your seat moments, but there are some great monster designs, like the sick and twisted Obscura with a camera for a head. It just looks all kinds of wrong. Then there's Anima, who stalks you with some beautifully haunting vocals. Nope, can't handle that. But my favorite monster is the Watcher, which must have horrible peripheral vision if it can't see Sebastian right there. Still, very creepy, even if this is the only time you see it. That is one problem I have with The Evil Within 2. For every cool monster design, there's about 2 generic ones. Like, oh, flaming rock monster. I've only seen that about 12,000 times. Yeah, the game really loses its momentum in the second half. It's when we stop seeing cool creature designs and the story begins to crumble. I will get into spoilers here, so skip to this time if you want to avoid them. Anyway, when Sebastian enters a stem at the beginning, the mystery is compelling. Everyone inside the system is being killed by a psychopath known as Stefano, a serial killer in the real world who turns his victims into grotesque art pieces. Since photography is his niche, the world starts to reflect that, with a giant camera lens watching over Sebastian in the sky, and he'll have to fight that twisted Obscura enemy I was talking about earlier. Later on, in Sebastian's office hub area, some newspaper clippings uncover his backstory as a war photographer. What a fascinating antagonist. I wonder how he'll keep me on my toes for the rest of the game, and he's dead. Yeah, you fight and kill him in chapter 8 out of 15, right when you start to know more about him. But don't worry, he's replaced by Father Theodore Wallace, an infinitely less interesting antagonist who wants to take over the STEM system as its leader. This is a Far Cry 3 situation, where a compelling villain is introduced only to be killed halfway and be replaced by the most boring villain in existence. What's worse is that his boss battle is just a collection of bosses from the first Evil Within game. What's more is that he's not even the last dude you fight. That's Sebastian's wife Myra. How many antagonists do we need? Have we learned nothing from The Amazing Spider-Man 2? I will admit though, the story is better than the first game, if only because the characters actually feel like characters this time. Sebastian's motives are personal, and we can greatly sympathize with him wanting to get his daughter back. His character development got a bit heavy-handed though, with unsubtle themes about self-forgiveness, but I still felt happy for him when he got his daughter out of STEM at the very end. Despite my problems with the story, that can all be forgiven if the game itself is good, which it is. I just don't think it ever goes beyond what's expected of it. While the gameplay is good, I mainly felt like I was just going through the motions. Go here, shoot some enemies, stab them in the back, talk to NPC, rinse and repeat. It certainly doesn't help that the environments aren't that visually striking, which is one point I'll give the original above the sequel. It felt like I was going on a roller coaster of horror in that first game, whereas the sequel doesn't get too crazy with its locales. It's mainly just a town with a few scary otherworldly sections and nothing more. While I appreciate exploring these areas to find new gear, I would have liked it even more if they got as crazy as they did in The Evil Within 1. Despite laying out my problems with The Evil Within 2, I still wonder why I didn't love it as much as other people did. When did this come out? 2017? Okay, let's figure out what games came out since then. That explains it. Since The Evil Within 2 came out, we have been graced by survival horror goodness. Playing the remake of Silent Hill 2 right before The Evil Within 2 probably didn't help my judgment of the latter. But even before that, we got 2 great remakes of Resident Evil classics and a new one, Village, though that is not universally loved as much as 2 and 4. Moving on to something original, Alan Wake 2, a game that wasn't only scary, but highly ambitious in storytelling, making it one of my favorite games of all time. So when you pit The Evil Within 2 against these giants, it's an unfair battle. I've played every single one of those games before this one, and maybe if I played it when it came out, I would have appreciated it more. There have just been a lot of amazing survival horror games these past few years, and The Evil Within 2 does not live up to those standards for me. Frankly, I could have tempered my expectations had I looked at Metacritic before playing, but I didn't want my thoughts influenced by that. Instead, they were influenced by the game's vocal fanbase that sings its praises, and I wouldn't say they're wrong about how they feel. It's still a good game, it feels great to play, there are some cool creature designs, and the story is vastly superior to the first. It also has a unique concept of a Matrix-like world within our minds to create the stuff of nightmares. Though the IP remains in limbo at Microsoft, I hope someday Tango Gameworks or maybe even another developer continues making games in this universe. There's so much room for creativity here, and seeing how far survival horror has come, surely a third game would be influenced by these great titles of the past few years. But really, is there something about The Evil Within 2 that I'm missing? Let me know down in the comments. Tell me why you appreciate this game. I would love to have some dialogue about it, as long as we're respectful. In the meantime, I wish you all a very happy Halloween, and I hope you enjoy time with family, friends, loved ones, maybe even play a horror game or two. It's all good fun on this holiday. Just make sure not to eat too much candy. Some of you are in your 30s, you can't eat 5 Reese's peanut butter cups anymore. Chill out with that.